Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and today we are going to talk about esophagus anatomy. So let's start our topic with introduction. Esophagus is a muscular collapsible tube of alimentary canal that transport food and liquid from the pharynx to the stomach. It is approximately 25 cm long in adults. It extends from the lower border of cricoid cartilage to the cardiac orifice of stomach and lies posterior to the trachea. It has cervical part, thoracic part, and abdominal part and passes through the esophageal hiatus of diaphragm at T10 level. Extent and dimensions of esophagus. Upper end of esophagus begins at the C6 level where lower border of cricoid cartilage is present. Lower end of esophagus ends at T11 level where cardiac orifice of stomach is present. The length of esophagus is approximately 25 cm. Its diameter is 2 to 3 cm that is collapsed at the rest. Parts of esophagus include cervical part that is from C6 to the thoracic inlet and it is about 5 cm in length. It has a thoracic part that is starts from thoracic inlet to the diaphragm and it is about 18 to 20 cm in length. Third part of esophagus is abdominal part that starts from diaphragm and it is still the stomach and it is about 2 to 3 cm in the length. Curvatures and constrictions of esophagus. First we will talk about curvatures of esophagus. There are two lateral curvatures that include convex left curvature in the upper thorax region and then there is convex right curvature in the lower thorax region. Then there is one anterior-posterior curvature that corresponds to the thoracic spine. And now let's talk about constrictions of esophagus that are clinically important for endoscopy. There is upper esophageal sphincter that is present at the level of C6 and it is by the cricopharyngeus muscle. Then there is another constriction of esophagus that is at aortic arch level that is T4 level. Third constriction of esophagus is at the left main bronchus area that is T5 area or T5 level. Fourth constriction of esophagus is at the esophageal hiatus that is T10 level. Now let's talk about relations, anatomical relations of the esophagus. First, we will talk about the cervical part anatomical relation. So, anatomical relation of cervical part of esophagus is that, like the anterior part, anteriorly to this region, there is trachea and recurrent laryngeal nerve. Posterior to cervical part of esophagus are the vertebral column and paravertebral prevertebral fascia and lateral to cervical part of esophagus there is thyroid gland lobes and carotid sheaths. Now let's talk about the anatomic relation of thoracic part of esophagus. So thoracic part of esophagus anterior to it is the trachea and left main bronchus and left atrium. Posterior to thoracic part of esophagus is vertebral body and thoracic duct and also a zygous vein. Lateral to thoracic part of esophagus is right pleura and lung and also aortic arch and thoracic aorta. Now let's talk about abdominal part of esophagus. Now, it lies in the posterior mediastinum. It passes through the diaphragm at the level of T10. Structure of wall of esophagus from inner to outer. First wall is the mucosa that is made up of non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. Second wall is submucosa that contain mucus gland. Third wall of esophagus is muscular layer. In upper third area of esophagus, muscular layer is by skeletal muscle. In middle third of esophagus, muscular layer is by mixed skeletal and smooth muscle. And in the lower third of esophagus, muscular layer is by smooth muscle only. Then there is the fourth wall that is the outermost wall of esophagus that is by adventitia. It is basically connective tissue covering and there is no serosa in thoracic esophagus. And abdominal part has peritoneum on it. Now let's talk about sphincters of esophagus. First sphincter is upper esophageal sphincter that is formed by cricopharyngeus muscle. It prevents air entry during respiration. Second is lower esophageal sphincter that is physiological sphincter and not anatomical sphincter and it prevents gastric reflex. Now let's talk about blood supply of esophagus. Cervical part of esophagus is supplied by inferior thyroid artery. Thoracic part of esophagus is supplied by esophageal branches of thoracic aorta and bronchial arteries, and abdominal part of esophagus is supplied by left gastric arteries and left inferior phrenic artery. Talking about venous drainage of esophagus, cervical part is drained into inferior thyroid vein, thoracic part is drained into azygous and hemizygous vein, and abdominal part is drained into left gastric vein, that is portal vein tributary. Now let's talk about lymphatic drainage of esophagus. Cervical esophagus drains into the deep cervical lymph nodes. Thoracic part of esophagus drains into the posterior mediastinal nodes, and abdominal part of esophagus drains into left gastric and celiac nodes. Talking about nerve supply of esophagus, it has parasympathetic nerve supply, that is by vagus nerve. Then esophagus has sympathetic nerve supply, that is by cervical and thoracic sympathetic trunks. And then it has enteric nervous system, that is by myenteric and submucous plexus that regulate peristalsis of esophagus. Now let's talk about functions of esophagus. First function is conduction of food and liquids through peristaltic contraction. Second function is prevention of reflux with the sphincter action, that is through the lower esophageal sphincter. Third function is lubrication of bolus through mucus secretion. Talking about clinical significance of esophagus, first significance is esophageal varices that are dilated vein due to portal hypertension, and there is risk of rupture of these veins. Second significance is achalasia cardia, that is failure of lower esophageal sphincter relaxation that causes dysphagia. Third significance is gastroesophageal reflux disease, that is acid reflux from stomach that cause esophagitis or inflammation of mucosa of esophagus. Fourth significance is hiatal hernia, that is protrusion of stomach through esophageal hiatus. Fifth significance is esophageal atresia or tracheoesophageal fistula. These both are the congenital anomalies. Sixth significance is foreign body lodgement, that is common at construction areas. Seventh significance is carcinoma of esophagus, that is common in middle and lower thirds areas and is spreads quickly due to rich lymphatic system. Now let's talk about conclusion of this lecture video. Esophagus is a vital muscular tube that connects the pharynx and stomach with complex muscular, vascular and neural arrangements. Its close relation to thoracic organs and multiple construction make it clinically significant in surgery, endoscopy, oncology, and gastroenterology. And this was all about esophagus anatomy. Hopefully you liked the video. If you do, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment. Thank you for watching.